This is the Leadway Wealth Builders Podcast, episode 195, and today I'm going to be talking about my goals for 2026 and our vivid vision that we did with my wife and for myself. So we're going to be breaking all of that down today, why it's important, and some of my goals for this year that we have some big things coming up. So if you haven't listened to this podcast before, this is the Leadway Wealth Builders Podcast, and my name is Chris Rickenbaugh. I am documenting my journey in real estate and business and also bringing on high-level investors to share their stories about how they built their businesses. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at chris.rickenbaugh. That's chris.reicchenbach. And wherever you're listening to this podcast, thank you so much. 2026 is going to be a great year filled with new guests being brought on the podcast and new content, as well as me just documenting what I'm doing and how I'm doing it and how I'm thinking about it during the process, because it's definitely something that, it's a work in progress, especially with the podcast and the business and real estate with what we've had going on. So I'm super excited to be continuing to share that story and bring on these high-level investors as we get into over 200 episodes here in the next couple of episodes. And this year it'll bring us over 300 episodes. So make sure you're commenting and telling me what you want to be able to listen to. If there's a certain guest or a certain topic, I'm more than happy to bring those guests on and give their insight. But today, I do want to break down the vivid vision me and my wife set, and for myself, as well as my goals for 2026. So let's get into it. So as I talked about on the last podcast, I gave my 2025 in review, and I did mention that we are buying a business. We have an accepted LOI. We're currently in due diligence on this business and raising money. So I'm actually having capital calls to be able, or not capital calls, but investor calls to be able to break down what we're going to be doing with this business and raising money for it. So super excited to be able to go through that. But I wanted to kind of break down the real estate part first and then get into the business later in the podcast. And this episode won't be too long, so just hang in there with me. But so for real estate for us, our first year, because I bought my first property in May or June of 2024. So we're a full year and a half into this real estate thing. And year one was about making a lot of mistakes, being in some different partnerships that did not turn out very well. And year two has been all about cleaning up those mistakes. And that's really what I'm looking to do and doing right now in the process of we were able to offload a lot of those houses that I bought in that first year, and currently still have 3 houses that working on offloading. So 2 out of those 3 are pretty much handled and should be getting ready to go and shouldn't be having too much of a problem to be able to offload those here in the first month or month or 2. And then the final house, that's still a little bit of a work in progress, just finding the right exit strategy for that one. But the main goal of this is to stop the bleeding on what we've been going through over this past year, making sure that we can just offload them and then, basically stop the bleeding, because for where we are right now, we can't really move because we have these payments to be able to take care of on the flips every single month. And then we also have investors to worry about. So making sure that we offload these houses, it just stops the bleeding for everything. We're not paying anymore. We're just being done with them completely and being able to really just hit the reset button and go from there. And as odd as it sounds, I was able to run our situation through ChatGPT and, really have that deep conversation or, not with a single person, but it's able to look at it, analytically and say, okay, well, here's the situation. Here's what you need to do. And number one was stop the bleeding, figure out how to be able to get out of this, because we're not able to go and make more income when we're still dealing with these problems, because we're just bleeding every single month. Anything we make goes right back into these properties. So it doesn't make any sense for us to keep healing or, dealing with these houses. So being able to get rid of them in the best way possible, we're not going to be taking a profit on them. We're going to be able to pay our investors back what they're owed and basically be done with that part. And once we're offloaded, then we can start looking at buying houses again. But currently, anything that gets sent my way, it's looked at more of a wholesale, and currently working on a land deal, hoping to get that signed contract back anytime today. So that may or may not go through, but that's something that we're looking at. I got sent a piece of land. It's like, all right, well, this makes sense as a wholesale deal. Let's go ahead and see if we can lock that up for pretty cheap and be able to get it sold quickly. And tons of demand in that market, great location. But main point of the story is being able to offload what we have now to be able to, give us firm footing again, to be able to go make more money, because it's so hard when anything you make goes right back out the door. We want to be able to keep and hold on to that money. And that brings me to focusing on consistent income for 2026, because what I just talked about, those 3 houses will be taken care of in the first quarter. That is 100% our sole focus. And, if not the first month, we should be able to have these things taken care of, but we're focusing on consistent income. So a big part of that is going to be the business purchase, which is what we're, not looking at doing. We're raising money for the purchase right now. Once we have the money, we can, that'll fully fund the purchase, and then we can get in there and start operating. And a little bit about this business, it is an events venue that does quite a bit of weddings, and all basically from all the studying I've done, from all the talking to people that I've done, this is a great opportunity, and a great opportunity for us as well as other investors, because it's not something that is, just a broken down business. It's operators that just haven't been operating it like a business. So when we can come in and really take our knowledge and expertise and put our full time and attention into it, we're going to be able to double what they're doing already, just running it kind of halfway as a hobby. So they put a ton of time and effort into it in the beginning, and now they're like, hey man, this is a lot of work for us to be doing when we have other stuff going on. It's like we would rather just sell, and that's where I come in, because this is what we're looking to do as our full-time job, and we're looking to, throughout all the troubles we've had over the past year, what I've really been able to focus on is, real estate. To be able to do this and really have a ton of confidence and security in this, we have to have another source of income, because what I'm seeing with the real estate and the flipping and the wholesaling, we're chasing these chunks of money. So that's fine when you have this big machine rolling and the market's hot, but when we get into these tough markets and everybody slows down, like my mentor, they're doing 100 houses a year and now they're down to 60. Any of these wholesalers that I'm talking to, it's like 1 to 2 deals a month. And it's like, that's enough to get by. But when you're looking at growing a business and, focusing on what we want to focus on, writing out our vivid vision, which I'll talk about here in a second, we're able to see what we're doing is not going to be able to get us where we are. Back when the market was hot, a lot of people made a lot of money. And, they were, I don't want to say lucky, because they were able to now build businesses that, can consistently do this and not have to operate at what they were doing in the past. But it's a different game right now. And that's what we're looking to be able to shift our focus on is, hey, this worked really, really well for a lot of people, but right now it's a really difficult market. And for myself, I don't want to be so dependent on, if the market's doing great, if it's doing bad, do sellers want to pay 10% less? Because if you're flipping houses, that 10% or that 20% that they're taking off, and they want this and they want that, that means I have to put more into the property. They want less for the property. It's just kind of this meet in the middle to where I'm not making a whole lot of money. And wholesaling is going to get a lot harder. And it's just going to change. So that's why we're focusing on buying a business, because leading into our vivid vision, which I'm going to talk about, is the reason that, we can see where we want to go, and we realize what we're doing now isn't going to be able to get us there. So talking about that vivid vision is we're able to see what our life would look like in, 10 years if money wasn't a concern. We have all the money in the world. We can do what we want. What would we do with that? And that comes from a lot of talking to these higher level investors that I brought on the podcast, like Gideon Spencer. We had a really good conversation on that episode and then a little bit after. And he really broke it down for me and almost challenged me to think a little bit bigger. And he's like, man, what you're doing, you're grinding so hard for this small amount of money to where if you just look way bigger, it'll take you a little bit longer to find it, but that's going to be able to take care of your problems and make you, it's like trying to make 100,000 versus trying to make 1 million. 1 million is going to be way easier from what he's saying, and he's gone out and done it, and he's able to walk me through on why that's possible and why anybody can do it. And it makes way more sense than what we're doing. So when I see that bigger target, I can build that into my vivid vision and realize that business is the way to be able to do this. And taking that business income and then putting it into the real estate is going to be a way safer play than depending on the market, because just because of the appreciation and, market conditions, I'm not dependent on a single market. I can just tag on rentals. I can focus on cash flow rather than trying to just flip and wholesale those properties at whatever I can. So being able to have that vivid vision, do that 10-year exercise and perfect day exercise, that's what's able to really bring us to where we're looking at now. So being able to sit down with my wife, Brian Lubin and his girlfriend actually came up with this 37-question couples co-vivid vision. And we sat down to be able to do that this weekend. We filled out all the questions and really sat down and had a couple-hour conversation, which was really, really interesting. And we were able to figure out, for this perfect vision, what do we need to be bringing in per month? Like, how are we going to be able to do this? And that's through travel, lifestyle, business, personal relationships, all of it. And what it really broke down for us is because through the prompt that's on that document, we throw that into ChatGPT. After we've written up all of our responses, we throw our responses in, and then it builds us this vivid vision along with a budget for what we want to be able to do. So our perfect day boils down to what we would need per month. So now we can see that, the real estate is a part of getting us there, but we need to do it through active business and through that active income. So real estate's definitely a part of it, but is it the main thing? And that's where we think probably not. We need to be able to go after these bigger assets that are going to be able to get us closer to our goals, like hotels, like RV parks, something that's going to bring in massive cash flow like active business. And something that we talked to Gideon about is having the business attached to real estate. So that's like boutique hotels right now are the thing. And what you can do is Brittany Arneson, Investor Girl Brit, she just broke down what her costs of acquisition and renovations on a hotel. And they bought it for, I think, around $2 million. They put $1 million and some into it, but now it's worth 8-point-something million. And that's what they're going to refi off of, gaining, with her 3 partners, they're going to gain a couple million each of equity in that property. And those are the type of gains that you're going to have to be looking for. And that's with one purchase. I don't need to go out and purchase like 10 to 15 rentals to be able to do that same exact thing. So when we focus on the vivid vision, it helps us understand that we need to be thinking and doing something differently. So those bigger plays are going to be what's getting us to that vivid vision. And that's what we did this weekend on January 1st to really be able to sit down and go through what do we want our life to look like, what's going to be able to get us there, and that's what we're going to be able to commit to over this next 1 to 3 years. So, and that really set up our 2026 goals of what I talked about earlier, making sure that we offload these current houses as fast as possible, really focus on that business purchase to be able to get the active income rolling in. Once we do that, it's going to be a completely different game. So you're going to be able to follow along with me through this entire process, through the business purchases, through my real estate, everything about it. I'm going to be documenting it all here on the podcast and social media. So go ahead and follow me there at chris.rickenbaugh on Instagram and TikTok, where I'm going to be sharing my story. Keep listening to the podcast, and let's have a great 2026. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.